We'll call this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. I need a motion for adoption of the minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on Tuesday, November 13th, 2018, and the minutes of the organizational meeting of council held at City Hall on Tuesday, November 13th, 2018, be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Wall. All those in favor? Carried. We have no delegations this evening, so we'll move right into hearings. We'll open the public hearing for rezoning bylaw 18-8681. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of or opposed to the rezoning application?
Mayor Ferris, councillors, I'm here to speak for it. Just if there's any questions in regards to the zoning, I'm here to answer them.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Beers? Okay, thank you very much. Motion to close the hearing.
Oh, sorry. I make a motion to close the public hearing for. Sorry here. Sorry, where am I at?
Just roll back down here. You can go back one. Yeah, right there, that PC.
Be resolved that the public hearing for variation PC 81-18, City of Portage la Prairie, lots 574, Plan 66, PLTO, and River Lot 64, Parish of Portage la Prairie, 2nd Street Northwest, now be closed. That's not the one. Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience, Council.
Keep going up.
That one right there. Sorry, we'll take that one back. Council, resolved that the public hearing for the rezoning bylaw 18-8681 CHB developments, southeast corner of 3rd Street and 4th Avenue Northeast, now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Draycott. All those in favor of the motion?
Speaking of that now, is that right?
Yep.
So the issue we know, Council, we have is the rezoning of the property from M1 light industrial to R3 residential multifamily. The information's in front of you. The application has been circulated to the various city departments, I believe with no concerns being expressed. There was the first reading, if you remember, back on September the 24th, so you've seen this previously. So the recommendation is that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the application to rezone the land known as southeast corner of 3rd Street and 4th Avenue Northeast and legally described lots as 43/55 Plan 23 and Lot A Plan 59-981, Parish of Portage la Prairie from M1 light industrial to R3 residential multifamily, and that the bylaw number 18-8681 be read a second time.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And our third and final reading, that bylaw number 18-8681 be read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. All those in favor of the motion? We'll open the public hearing for variation PC 81-18. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of or opposed to the application? Final call for variation PC 81-18. Motion to close the hearing.
Then I move that it be resolved that the public hearing for variation PC 81-18, City of Portage la Prairie, lots 574, Plan 66, PLTO, and River Lot 64, Parish of Portage la Prairie, 2nd Street Northwest, now be closed.
Was that one ours? 2nd Street? Sorry. Okay, sorry.
Did you want to speak to the hearing?
I'm just here if there's any questions on that one. That one was ours. Sorry, I missed that one.
Okay. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Rachel Saltese.
Did council have any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
We still have the motion on the floor?
Motion is on the floor, and we have a seconder, Councillor Budds. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
So now you have to go in and,
So I be resolved that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of the City of Portage la Prairie to vary the following. The minimum site area of 464.5 meters to be reduced to 262.9 meters, and that the minimum site width of 15.2 meters to be reduced to 8.686 meters, as per subdivision number 4550-18-7739, at the property known as 2nd Street Northwest, which is legally described as Lot 574, Plan 66, PLTO and River Lot 64, Parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Meyer, and seconded by Councillor Budds. Any comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? That's carried. So our hearings for this evening. We're going to move into committees. First up is Finance Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Budds, please.
Your committee has nothing to report. However, I've got a few items I'll take care of in new business.
Councillor Budds. City Planning and Economic Development Committee. Councillor Meyer.
The committee has nothing to report, but there are also a couple items that we'll take care of in old business.
Thank you. Community Service Committee. Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for Community Services Committee this evening.
Thank you. Waterworks Committee. Councillor Wall.
Waterworks Committee has nothing to report this evening, Your Worship.
Councillor Espy, Transportation Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has one item on the agenda, and it is the process for streetlight installation requests. The city occasionally receives requests for installation of new streetlights, often for new developments being constructed. The person requesting the installation is generally responsible for the costs associated with the installation. The city being responsible only for the monthly operating costs. Those monthly costs generally total a couple of $100s per year. Manitoba Hydro requires a resolution from council to approve the installation of streetlights. In the past, these have gone to council on an individual basis as they are requested. With the cost to the city being minimal each time, it would be more efficient to allow the city manager and director of operations to approve the installations instead of putting the individual requests through the council process. It is the administrative recommendation that the council authorize the city manager and or the director of operations to approve streetlight installations, and that a letter outlining this authorization be sent to Manitoba Hydro. And I so move.
By Councillor Espy and seconded by Councillor Meyer. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Councillor Espy. We have no deferred business, but we have some, Public Safety Committee. Councillor Knox.
Public Safety Committee has nothing to report, Your Worship.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks, Miss.
And we have no deferred business. We do have some new business. First of all, Finance Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Budds, please.
Thank you. A little bit of a housekeeping item here, 2019 interim budget. Basically, we do this every year to authorize expenditure of such funds until we have our finalized budget. And so we adopt an interim budget. You can see here that we've outlined some preliminary numbers. Capital purchases, just so everybody knows, are excluded from funding under the interim operating budget, so that's got to wait until we have our financial plan approved. So in the general operating fund, we're looking at about just over $7.3 million, and in the utility, just about $9 million. So it is a recommendation of your committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the 2019 interim operating budget of $7.347 million for the general operating fund and $8.936 million for the the utility operating fund.
Moved by Councillor Budds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And the next new business item is also Finance Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Budds.
Thank you. This one is a bit more detailed, and I know council's had some time to discuss this and look it over. This is the interactive fountain in Simplot Central Park, the ask of the Parks Committee for council to review and approve the annual operating expenses. And so this is a comprehensive report, and there is some attachments there that's been completed by management. I know I was one councillor that spoke out and said that we want our own operating teams to review the operating costs aside from what was presented from the Parks Committee. I'm very happy that due diligence has been completed, and it is definitely within operating thresholds that was presented by the Parks Committee. In fact, even lower in some of those instances. So it's not news that the city installed accessible playground in that park in 2017, but that was one step of many to come. And so now what was preventing that Parks Committee from going on more of an aggressive and successful fundraising campaign was having the certainty that the city would cover operating costs. And so I think that the cost to purchase and install this fountain is dependent on the type chosen, which ranges upwards of $536,000. And I don't know if a representative wanted to speak to kind of where fundraising efforts are at, but I can say, at least from my chair, I think this will help this endeavor. Did anyone want to speak to that or not? Any councillors? Yes, no, put you on the spot a little bit.
Well, I can say that we've raised over $100,000, but have commitments for over 150. So it's going well, but should this pass tonight, it will go a whole lot easier, I think.
Yeah, and I think even from a grant writing perspective, the Parks Committee was looking for some certainty from the city. So I'm comfortable in making the recommendation as Finance Chair that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie approve all annual operating expenses for the interactive fountain in Simplot Central Park in its budget for the first and all following years after the fountain is installed, conditional to Council's approval of the type of fountain chosen in its entirety.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any comments or questions on the motion? Councillor Draycott, did you want to say something?
I guess I would like to say that this has been a very long process. The Parks Committee is very excited. I think that this has come forward to Council this evening and that we can move ahead with some certainty in terms of fundraising and grant writing. So I just want to say thank you very much to administration, because a lot of time and effort was put into a very comprehensive report given back to Council for budget deliberations, which made it much easier, I think, for us to come to a good decision about this particular feature moving forward in our city. As we move forward with fundraising, we're excited to bring final information back to City Council in order to do final approval on what that interactive water feature will look like for final approval for Council. So as long as everything goes as planned this evening, then very excited about moving forward with this project.
Well, I just want to say it has been a long time. I think it was 5 or 6 years ago when the idea first came up. There's been a tremendous amount of work done over those years by members from this council, in particular Councillor Espy and Councillor Draycott, and the Parks Committee, and certainly our administration. This ask was put through a lot of different lenses to make sure that all the bases were covered. Tremendous work done by administration. I want to in particular mention Kathy McFarland, who went into great detail to make sure that we had good information on this so that we could make a really good decision. So anyway, it's good to see the progress on this after so much time. Okay, the question's been called. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. The next item of new business is also yours, Councillor Espy.
Or Councillor Buds.
Councillor Buds.
So the next item of new business is just an agreement basically for GIS and ESRI. Normally this wouldn't necessarily come to council, but it's longer than the terms or the acceptable terms for management to sign off on, so that's why we're discussing this here tonight. And so just by way of background, the RM, Portage, and the planning districts are using an outdated and difficult to use GIS system. They have requested to partner with us, licensing for ESRI GIS software, And so we would provide access to infrastructure maps, allowing the city to see the RM, infrastructure and share licenses with the planning district and the RM. So I think as we take a look at what we're doing regionally, it makes sense for us to partner in this manner for sure. And just from a cost perspective, the RM and the planning district would be responsible for an extra $13,600. In addition, the RM would pay the city $2,000 and the planning district would pay the city $1,750 for server space and extra costs associated with hosting the files. So again, just in the spirit of partnership. So it is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move that the city enter into an agreement with the Portage la Prairie Planning District and the RM of Portage la Prairie to partner in a licensing agreement, and that the city manager be authorized to sign said agreement.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Knox. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Draycott?
I do think that this is a good partnership, a good move for us to work again with our partners in the RM. Is there a period of time that we would revisit this partnership, or is this going forward long-term?
Through your worship to Councillor Draycott, there's a period in regards to the licensing that the licensing period that we're signing the group for. I believe it is 4 years. 5 years, thanks. Oh, sorry, 3 years and 5 months, and then that period will conclude, and then we'll probably be up onto an annual basis in which we wouldn't need council approval, but I don't think there'd be concern.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? Final item of new business is the 2018 election report. Councillor Buds.
Thank you. And so this is for information only. There is some good information in this report. It's a summary of the results of the 2000 election spend. And so in our budget in 2018, we did include just over $15,000 for the city's half of running the election, and that was going to be split 50-50 with the school division. Positive to note that the total expenses were only $20,000, so our half, or just over $20,000, so our half is just over $10,000, and you can see that it's broken down there. Just some good feedback from our team that ran the election in terms of the polling places. Stride Place was used, which worked well. There was the roaming polling station that worked well. The advanced poll saw more activity at the advanced poll than we've seen in the past, so I think that administration will be looking to duplicate that effort at the next time, and even maybe expand it. Advertising, voting officials. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of violation of the election signage bylaws, which a few of us learned quickly that proximity to intersections became an issue, and so we did pick up several election signs here at City Hall. So, overall, I think it's a comprehensive report, and I think, the council has any questions, they can field them my way or to administration. Hearing none, that concludes that new business report.
That concludes new business. We have some items of old business, water and sewer rates, and Councillor Buds, this is yours again.
Thank you. So this issue is to provide approval of Bylaw 18-8675 in compliance with the Public Utility Board Order 151/18. And so we're basically just giving final approval, including amended Schedule A. This is kind of a long, drawn-out process. So we did submit an application to the Public Utility Board back on June 28th of 2016 in support of an increase in utility rates and fees. We were the first municipality to follow the new simplified rate application process, and we did provide that in support and required for the application. So in order to do that, we had to do this approval of this bylaw, which was approved on council on June 25th. So it included utility rate increases up to 3%, fee increases for user-requested services such as water activation, construction, water, and inspections of newly installed meters of 3%. And to amend our billing method to be in cubic meters rather than gallons, and that was just bringing things a little bit more up to date. So the Public Utility Board issued on November the 7th an approval, requested rate increases in billings and cubic meters commencing the 1st of January in 2019. However, the fee changes were denied until we complete a full rate study. And so just so council's aware, that is definitely something that was already underway and was being planned for. And we are anticipating completing that full rate study in 2019. So it's not as a result of the denial. It was already proactively being dealt with by management here. So as a result, this bylaw has been amended and included with this report in order to facilitate the final approval process. So it is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move, that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie give second reading to the amended 2019 Water and Sewer Rates Bylaw 18-8675.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any comments or questions on the motion? Councillor Wall.
I'd just like to comment that the increases do go up to 3%. Those are for level 2, 3, and 4 customers, not for the average homeowner, which will see a 2% increase. And that's all I have to say.
So, Councillor Wall, a couple of years ago, I was told that Public Utilities Board has asked every utility to level the rates charged between industry and residential. Is that
That's
still
correct. We had a 4-step rate system, and in order to close the gap between the level 4 and the level 1, we've been increasing the intermediate steps by a little larger percentage than the step 1, which is the average homeowner. We can't level them out all at once, or we'd have industry packing up and leaving town. So that's how we're handling.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor? And that's carried.
And finally, that bylaw 18-8675 be read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed, and the city will implement the 2019 water and sewer rates on January 1st, 2019.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. All those in favor of the motion? The next item is Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have 2 items under old business. First one I'm going to refer to is the BL 18-8680, the issue, which did precede my time on council, but the deceased bylaw 18-680 and not proceed with the zoning amendment. I maybe would ask Mr. Brooks to be able to speak to a little bit of that.
Excuse me, Your Worship, declare a possible conflict and leave for this discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Wall. Councillor Meyer.
Thank you. If there's, if I could maybe get our planning district to speak to that shortly and see if there's any questions that council would have.
After it was applied for, it was discovered that the R2 zoning does not comply with the definitions as per the bylaw, so we are not proceeding with it at all.
Okay. So, what's that mean in terms for this property owner?
It means that he can do as he applied for on his permit, use his garage and use his upstairs for storage space.
Not residential, just storage.
At this time, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council? With that said, then, it's the recommendation is that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie find the rezoning application without merit, and therefore resolve that the bylaw 18-8680 process be ceased, as the property does not meet the requirements of an R2 residential 2-family zone. So moved.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Buds.
So if the individual that intended on this to go through wants to reapply, there's obviously a process for that, a fee that would be paid, I assume. And so if the original application, and I know His worship mentioned if it was going to be residential, that obviously has to cease if that was a desire. Is that correct?
He cannot use it as a residential above the garage, correct?
Great.
Any further questions? All those in favor?
I'd just like to clarify, at this time, he cannot use it for a residential above the garage.
So I will just ask for clarity on at this point in time.
The other option is the other option is at some point in time that somebody may apply to have secondary suites allowed in RMs or in the city zoning law. And if that is the case and council so wishes to go with it, and there is criteria, and if we put criteria in the zoning law, they could apply to do it as a secondary suite.
So point of clarity would mean the zoning bylaw would have to be changed and accepted.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So currently, the zoning bylaw has got no mention of secondary suites. That's correct.
That is correct.
Any other questions? Okay. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And our final item of old business is also yours, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. And a similar but unrelated issue is to seize bylaw 18-8682 and not proceed with the zoning amendment. Once again, this did precede my time on council, so I would refer it to our planning district, but I trust it's probably the same reasoning or rationale as the previous one.
Yes, it's the same thing.
So then it's this committee's recommendation that the council of the city of Portage la Prairie find the rezoning application without merit and therefore resolve that the bylaw 18-8682 process be ceased as the property does not meet the requirements of an R2 residential two-family zone. So moved.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Questions or comments?
I guess general question, I don't know how the two individual buildings are currently occupied, but if the owner of the building did proceed without the rezoning application going through and continue on with a residential two-family dwelling, what are the repercussions of that?
Mr. Brooks, could you enlighten us a little bit on that?
If somebody went ahead with it and did it without the proper approval, then they are in violation of the bylaw and they can be held liable in a court of law.
And so I would repeat, what are the repercussions of that? Not that I didn't like your answer, I just want to know what that means in terms of...
You take them to court. Simple. If they're not complying with the bylaw, you end up taking them to court.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. So council is adjourned at 6:29 p.m. We're going to move right into committee. And just for members of the public that may not know, committee is open to the public and it's open to the media. We'll call committee to order at 6:29 p.m. First up is Finance Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Budd, please.
Thank you. There's just one item on my committee report for council's consideration review tonight, and that is to approve a new lease and then also to assume a lease agreement. And so, as we know, the City of Portage la Prairie does now operate and take control, I guess, over the maintenance of our buildings as compared to that previously being the responsibility of some of the organizations that we lease to. And so what we're looking to do is formalize agreements with tenants of the Gillespie Center, now occupied by the Amalgamated Gillespie PDAC Incorporated and Community Futures Heartland organizations. So, as I just mentioned, we own those buildings, and we agreed to take over maintenance in 2018. At the request of the former Portage Community Center Incorporated. So that was negotiations and discussions that we had with that group. This would allow them to focus on their core strengths of delivering art and not about property management. So you can definitely see that there was a desire to do that. So there was previous lease agreements between the Portage Community Center and Portage District Arts Council and the Portage Community Center and Community Futures Heartland. So now we need to change those lease agreements around. And so we've come to an agreement, and the Gillespie lease is a 5-year term expiring December 31st, 2004. And then the Heartland would be a lease assumption, which would expire in 2019. So I'll be bringing that forward to council at the time of our next meeting, and I'm open to any questions anyone might have right now. And that does conclude my committee report.
Thank you, Councillor Butts. City Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Meyer, please.
Something that I'm extremely excited to talk about. Thank you, Your Worship. Through the Portage la Prairie Planning District, you will see that the permits for both city and rural combined have an extremely increased value over this time last year, which I really think, Council, of course, shows the sign of the times and obviously where we're going. I will mention, though, that the number of permits are down, but the dollar value is significantly up. So I do believe that that certainly reflects a lot of the major industrial development that's going in and around this town. So I will also refer to our planning district there if there's any other comments that you would like to add to that, Mr. Brooks.
No, just that we're doing a good year. We're having a good year.
Excellent. I would also like to take a second to refer to our PRED representative, Mr. May. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
We're having a fantastic year, and 2019 is looking equally bright.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council? Seeing none, we can do a little bit of whoop whoop if we'd like, but I think it's really good to see that kind of dollar value starting to take place, and believe me, I believe it's just the beginning.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Community Service Committee, Councillor Drake.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening I would like to invite Rochelle Rands and Inspector Jared St. Pierre up to the mic. We have a presentation about the hub.
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Rochelle and I, Rochelle's going to be my clicker as we go through this. How many have had a chance to preview this presentation? So pretty much everyone. So we're going to...
Spelling mistake? Yeah.
So I'll gloss over it and go through, and if there's any questions, we'll get to those at the end. So community mobilization started in Glasgow, Scotland back in 2008. It was a strategy to try and reduce gang violence. And back in 2010, Chief of Police for Prince Albert, Dale McPhee, attended with a bunch of representatives from the different public sectors, education, health, social services, child services, to Glasgow to study the model and look to implement it, which they successfully did in 2011. Since that time, multiple hubs have propped up across the country. And one specifically was initiated in January of 2015 in the city of Brandon, which I had the pleasure of being a part of. And it has been operating since April of 2015. So Chief McPhee says if it's predictable, it's preventable. That's a common phrase, and I think it speaks true to a lot of things that we deal with. So what is community mobilization exactly? It's human service agencies and community supports of various fields that meet together twice weekly. The purpose is to identify individuals or families in situations of acutely elevated risk. And the goal is to connect those individuals or families to supports and services within 24 to 48 hours of hub discussions. That results in reducing and potentially eliminating the risk factors that are present. So what does acutely elevated risk mean? It's the degree of probability of harm involved in any given situation, not mere inconvenience, plus the degree to which the existing risk categories require the support of multiple human service disciplines. So I won't go through all the list, but there's numerous risk categories that are evaluated. Now the Portage Hub Team consists of PCRC, Portage School Division, RCMP, Child and Family Services of Central Manitoba, Addictions Foundation of Manitoba, Probation Services, ROC, Youth for Christ, Department of Families, and they're new to the table, Manitoba Housing, and the City of Portage Indigenous Community Coordinator, and CMHA Central. Now, Rochelle and I sit at the Systems Leadership Team table, along with Victoria Espy from PCRC. And at the table itself, at the Systems Leadership Team, we add in their Southern Health. So currently they send Tracy Pollack, I believe her name is, to the Systems Leadership meeting, and she's attended a couple of actual hub meetings, but they're not currently at the hub table regularly. So here's a picture of our hub table in the Probation Services Office. These are the stats that you guys have had a chance to review. The top risk factor that the table here in Portage sees is mental health.
Our first meeting was at the end of May, and so these stats are actually from the end of October. So yeah, what you can see here is just the number of situations that have been brought to the table, so 46-ish, and then like Jared said, the highest risk factor in our community, which is no surprise to us, is mental health issues, families struggling with that. Also basic needs, drug addiction, crime victimization is also a concern. And on the next slide, I'll just show you, we wanted to highlight Brandon because we've been mentoring with them. They've helped us to get our hub going, and Nathan's been a part of that as well as Jared. So they knew what was going on in Brandon. And so you can see from this data that they've met 225 times and supported 356 situations that have been brought to the table. And similar to Portage, they have a high rate of drug abuse by persons, antisocial negative behavior, alcohol, and mental health supports. But I think what's important to note here is just the lead agencies that bring situations to the table, and then the ones that take, so the originating agency is the one that brings the client to the table, and then the lead agency is the one that takes the lead on providing services. And I think that's something here that's highlighted. 59 of the 200 or 356, the lead was Prairie Mountain Health, followed by RCMP and Probation, which also played a key role. When you look at our stats currently, addictions, AFM is taking the lead on 29 supports, as well as RCMP at 25.
So I'll glance over the 4-filter process. So because this deals specifically with privacy issues. So it's necessary to meet the privacy expectation. Only situations of acutely elevated risk are discussed. Identifiable information disclosed at the hub is minimized. Recording of individual information limited only to the agencies involved and the actual contact with the person. And the hub has no central record base, record-keeping system. So it's the identified database that we keep to track the stats that you see today. So the first filter is where each representative goes back to their respective agency and educates the staff and workers within their respective agency on what the hub mandate is and how to make referrals. One of the caveats is that if it's an issue or a risk to that specific agency, that the agency has done their best to manage that risk within the agency and feels that the risk or multiple risks associated with the person or family need to be addressed by more disciplines at the table. So the second filter occurs every Tuesday and Thursday at the hub table. The agency will present the situation in a de-identified format, so they won't name the name of the person or where that person lives. They will explain the risk factors associated to that, and then as a group, the hub will decide if it meets acutely elevated risk. The situation, if the situation doesn't meet the criteria, no personal information is disclosed and no further discussion takes place. If it does, however, meet the criteria, then it proceeds to filter 3. So at this point at filter 3, limited personal information, which is usually the name and date of birth of those involved, will be disclosed to allow the agencies to search their databases to determine if they've had contact with that person. Only the participating agencies will take notes, and they will proceed to a filter 4, which is where they break off from the main group after the meeting is done to come up with a strategic plan on how they're going to engage the people with acutely elevated risk and what support services they can offer them to help mitigate or eliminate that risk.
This is where the door knock occurs, right? Where that team goes out into the community, presents at their house and asks, shares who they are and that they're there to help and provide services to the families. So that happens shortly after the meeting, either at the end, Tuesday afternoon or Thursday afternoon or the following day. Because again, if it's acutely elevated risk, it means that it can't wait. We're not bringing situations to the table of chronic offenders or chronic people in need. It's people that we see that are escalating and we want to help them immediately. So that door knock happens shortly after the meeting.
Slide didn't work out as good. Basically, one of the beautiful things about this collaboration is the accountability that the team, the hub table, has to each other. I can speak from my experience with the Brandon Hub team that that team is very cohesive. They do a lot together, both professionally and off duty, so to speak, and they're accountable to each other. They make sure that they're pulling their weight because, yes, they also have a boss to answer to at their respective agencies, but sitting at the table comes with the responsibility of answering to each other. And so for that reason, we see a lot more collaboration and a lot more progress and success in helping people and offering those services and making those door knocks. And when they do make those door knocks, something wonderful happens. Most of the time, I think the hub in Brandon's, the Westman hub, they have about 5% of people that say, no, I'm not interested in the services you have to offer me. Please go away. But of those 5%, several of them will come back a month or two later after they've had time to chew on the information that was provided to them, realize that life isn't getting any better, and then they come back to the table. What also happens is that they talk about it with other people in the community. So far since its inception, the Portage Hub has had 3 self-referrals from people that have heard about the services offered by Portage Hub. So we're gaining momentum. So what is needed probably most desperately is for Southern Hub to be at the hub table participating on door knocks. From our discussions with Southern Health, we feel that public health would be the preferred service over mental health, as the current model of mental health delivery in the region limits their ability to engage in rapid intervention. Also, having our Indigenous CFS agencies to agree to participate collaboratively and engage in hub when called upon. And then funding to enhance program supports. So I know that a few grants have been applied for on behalf of the Portage Hub to assist with training Hub members and system leadership teams, as well as to help pay for incidental costs. So again, speaking from experience on the Brandon Hub, when we're doing a door knock and you're speaking to somebody who is at such a high level of stress due to lack of skills, being able to cope with what they're enduring in life, sometimes what we found was if we alleviated some of the immediate pressures, like not having diapers for their children because that's stressing them out, the laundry, not having money to go do laundry, we were pooling this money out of our pockets just to try and help these people, and we would talk to them and build that relationship with them so that we could get past that barrier of them not being able to hear what we need to say or have to say. And so I've applied for a grant under the criminal forfeiture funding for $25,000. About $21,000 of that will be used for training of the Hub team and system leadership table. The other $4 and change will be used to help look at securing funding for different vouchers to help cover things like diapers, transportation, basic needs that people can't get past, just to help them hear that message, right? By doing this, if we're successful, we're going to reduce and eliminate the acutely high risk that's occurring, and connect these people to supports and strategies to help mitigate those situations and make their life better, safer, and healthier.
And just, we'd like to thank the City of Portage for believing in us last year when we wanted to get this project going. And we've spent a lot of time working together. The three of us have really worked hard to build that relationship and really look at what is needed in our community. And it's thanks to your support that we're able to keep doing this. So thank you.
So subject to any questions that you may have, this is our presentation.
Questions from council? Councillor Knox.
I'm just curious. I noticed that one of your accepted situations was a neighborhood, and without any privacy breaches or anything. What does that mean in a?
Do you mind if Victoria sits at the Hub table on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Can we just ask her to speak on that?
Sure, Victoria.
Thank you for the question. We have 3 different avenues in which you can be referred to Hub. So as an individual, as a family, or in some circumstances, if there's enough happening within a neighborhood, the neighborhood itself could be referred. So we did have one neighborhood referred. The team was quite green, so it was rejected. But moving forward, now that we've gained some momentum and have a good team in place, if a situation like that came forward again, I think we'd be better equipped to look at it.
Thank you. And just one follow-up is that I have been in some discussions with Inspector St. Pierre at the same table with Southern Health, and I know I will do my best to continue to encourage them to have a seat at the Hub table and not just at systems leadership. So congratulations on the work you do.
Thank you.
Other questions from council? Councillor Butts?
Yeah, just further to that, I mean, you look at the success, and we knew this when it was embarked upon last year, that a key contributor was going to be Southern Health. And so is there anything that we can do as council to encourage that? I know we have Councillor Knox, and we've talked about it individually, but is there something formal that the City Council could do in terms of a request from Southern Health, in your opinion?
I think constant communication with Jane Curtis, who is the CAO of Southern Health, to express the community's needs and desires of their participation, lobbying the Minister of Health and communicating with the ADMs there would definitely help, so they understand the need and they're hearing it not just from her perspective, but they're hearing it from the community's perspective. Those would be 2 avenues that come to mind.
Southern Health is a pretty large region, and so we were trying to say We need to look beyond what we can do for the whole region and look at community basis. So what happens in Portage may be different than what goes on in Winkler or different than Steinbach. And so we're trying to give Portage a voice to say that we need to look at specifically what is going on in our community and what do we need, and not maybe just do a blanket approach across the region, but meet the needs of our community.
And I guess the same question goes for the Indigenous CFS organizations. Is there anything that we can do to, I mean, you said what we need, and that is their participation. Is there anything, again, from City Council's perspective that we could do in terms of even letter writing of support or anything in your opinion?
I would probably say the same avenues. You've done a great job in hiring Mr. Pache to help bridge the gap with the Indigenous communities. And I think that he will be one of the solutions, one of the tools that can be used to bridge that gap. Certainly engaging in dialogue with the respective chiefs and First Nation councillors to talk about the common issues and risks to the communities and to their people.
Thank you.
Draycott, you had a question?
Thank you. The self-referrals just kind of tweaked my interest a little bit. That must look very different. Somebody coming forward to the hub and presenting themselves as needing something from you than somebody being suggested through the community organizations. How has that been different for you, and what is the result of that? Is it different approach for the hub?
I can speak generically. I don't know specifically these three, but I think it speaks to the impact that the hub is having on the people that we're engaging with. Because if it wasn't happening, we wouldn't get any referrals. And so the fact that with so few situations at the table in its infancy, you're already getting 3, that's pretty good. I'll defer to Victoria as to which agencies, if you can remember, or it's kind of the anecdotal background to those situations.
2 of those were referred from the RCMP and 1 from the CMHA. So what happens then is it's automatic consent. So the referring agency will still bring the situation forward, but the fact that, and they would have done their due diligence to make sure that at that agency level, they've done everything they can for that person. So it would be an automatic accepted file.
Other questions? I just want to say I'm very impressed, since the rollout last spring, all the work that's been done and some of the results you're starting to get. I did have a question around Southern Health. Do we know, or do you know what the major roadblock is? Is it resources or something else?
What we're being told is that they have concerns regarding ethical dilemmas around a non-consensual model. And they're gathering information to allow themselves to have make decisions on how their involvement will look. But a time frame for what that looks like has not been identified. And I know that on a provincial level, health is undertaking a large restructuring and rephasing, which has just begun fundamentally. And realistically, any new structures that are in place will be several years in the making. So the question I've posed is, okay, so what can we do now, or what can, as an agency, can you help us out with now in order to deal with the high risks that we're seeing in this community? And they're still exploring that.
So they would be aware of, from the reports, it sounds like the RHA in Brandon was quite involved with that hub committee?
The RHA, Prairie Mountain Health, was both feed in right at the outset. Now, mind you, they have different funding structures and models. They had a mobile crisis unit right in Brandon, and one of the workers on the mental health side of things worked there, and she was involved right at the outset. Her name's Allison Doan. She's a phenomenal lady who's very dedicated to the hub and to her why as to why she got into mental health in the first place. So she saw the value of it and jumped in both feet. I've been told that certain health authorities are more fiscally responsible than other health authorities, and some will run deficits in order to provide different or more services. As I understand it, Southern Health is a fiscally responsible health authority.
Okay. So one final question around that. So Brandon RHA that was involved would have had to deal with the same ethical considerations as what Southern Health would have to deal with, right? They must have found a way to deal with those?
That's the part that we're trying hard to educate on, and I think that even within our region, there's many different community mobilization models. And so in the south, they do have community mobilization, but it might be called START, or, you know, and it is more of a consent basis. So, you know, we've been told that Southern Health sees that as a more, an easier way for them to jump on board because the consent is there. We researched many different models before we chose the hub model in following with Brandon, and we felt that this was the best sort of bang for our buck in regards to our community. And so with the START model, people refer themselves, but they're sort of under our wing for a year, and we just didn't think that we had too many people that we wanted to reach to look at that type of model. So there are definitely things that they know of, and I mean, another concern is that with all the different models in Southern Health, if they're sitting at each one, it's time consuming. But again, that's something that all of the stakeholders that we talked about today have committed to as a community in providing that service and someone to the table. So,
any other questions?
Victoria has one more thing that we wanted to share.
There's sections in both FIPA and FIA that speak directly to when information sharing is acceptable, and so there's different interpretations of that, but it's right in both acts when you can share information, and HUB does work within FIPA and FIA when sharing information, but each agency does their own due diligence to see how that fits within their own mandates.
Okay. I'm meeting with our MLA tomorrow morning, so I'll raise the issue with him, and I'll be meeting with the CEO, Jane Curtis, probably in February. I don't know if I'll get a chance to raise it before, but we'll do what we can. Thank you so much for coming out and doing the presentation for us tonight.
Again, thank you for your support for this initiative, and good night.
And that is everything for Community Services Committee this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall, please.
Yes, Your Worship. Waterworks Committee has no report this evening.
Councillor Espy, Transportation.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
And Councillor Knox, how's the Public Safety Committee?
Nothing to report, Your Worship, tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before we adjourn, we will have question periods, so if there's members of the public who would like to ask an information seeking question of council, we would welcome your questions.
Good evening, Mayor Ferris, councillors.
Evening, Mr. Ott.
My first question to you, sir, is to the council responsible for the Heritage Advisory Committee. 210 Portage Avenue is the oldest building in the city, built in 1855. And I wondered whether the city or its committee has any plans for that building, so that has it been set as a heritage building so that it cannot be destroyed? Will it be moved? What are the plans for the building?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Knox. I received a similar query from a letter from Mr. Pleckety Friday, I believe it was, and I forwarded that on to the Heritage Committee, and I don't know when they meet next.
We met a couple of days ago. We are aware of the property in question. Currently belongs to Mr. Lepke. I believe it's been a rental property for some time. I knew the property as the home of Rex Gilroy, a well-known local attorney when I was growing up, whose granddaughter is now a Winnipeg City Councillor. But we haven't talked to Mr. Lepke yet. We don't know what his plans are for the building. We are aware of some of the history of it, the fact that it was at Pratt's Landing. I'm a little familiar with Pratt's Landing because until 1960, when we started treating wastewater, we used to discharge our sewage at Pratt's Landing. So there's a little history. But we are aware of it, and we are looking into it.
Thank you, Councillor Wall, for that in-depth information.
Mayor Ferris, again, through you, sir, a question to the councillor responsible for the Art Committee, Councillor Mayer, excuse me. The goals and objectives of the Public Art Committee, do they have, or do they specify anything to do with sculptures, murals, city purchasing, or helping public art in the city?
Thank you, Mr. Nott, and it's actually Councillor Meyer, just for the record. You know what? I have been to one meeting. I have looked through the documents and so on. I really can't answer that question at this point in time. I do not have the documents in front of me, but I do know there are some for public perusal at this point in time, and I guess we can certainly get you what we've got right now and let you know what our next steps are. Would that be satisfactory, Your Worship?
Yeah.
Mr. Knott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, it's Mr. Meyer, Mr. Knott. Councillor Meyer?
No,
Councillor Meyer for the record.
I think he meant this mayor. Communication is so important, isn't it?
Thank you, Councillor. I really do want to be accurate.
Go ahead, Mr. Knott.
Mr. Mayor, item 14 that Council passed tonight, which concerned the heritage of the fountain in the Simplot Park. The wording you have in the budget, in the minutes here, is that for the first and all following years, the council will support the operating expenses. The only condition council has is the approval of the type of fountain. Are there other recreation or other installations where the council has approved operating expenses in their entirety with no look at 30 or 40 or 50 years from now? That, to me, it was a sweeping statement, and I just wondered whether there was any caveats on it at all.
Do you want to address that, Councillor Buds?
So, Mr. Knott, I think you heard me before having some concerns over exactly what you're talking about in terms of the city taking on legacy costs, both from an operating and infrastructure. And so I know there's, as was mentioned in council, a lot of work was done in reviewing exactly what the Parks Committee wanted to put on site. And so the wording of that recommendation was approved tonight. And the caveat is that council has final sign-off of exactly what's being built. And so if it comes to, and the research was done based on a certain amount of operating expense and capital, knowing full well what would be looking like in the future. So if it does get to the point where it's beyond what was agreed to and what council has the perception of what we're funding in terms of operating expenses, then I assume they'll be up for another discussion. But we're under the premise of approving the final construction, which then we have a very good understanding of what capital and operating looks like.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, sir. My concern was only with the wording of the motion passed tonight. I have no question about your fiscal responsibilities. I know things will be done properly. It just and the wording, it read like, go ahead for the rest of life.
Any further questions for council?
No further questions. I wish councillors and everyone here a very Merry Christmas and a happy and safe and prosperous New Year.
Well, thank you, Mr. Knott, and Feliz Navidad to you too. Did I say that right?
No.
Feliz Navidad. Merry Christmas. Hey, my Spanish isn't very good. Well, seeing no further questions, committee is adjourned at 7:04 p.m. Thank you for coming out, everybody.